Welcome again to Provisionally Approved, the podcast that wins awards for its camera work. I'm Mike Gorrie, and hashtag Gorrie Fact, Gorrie does not have feelings. In fact, he broke up with feelings about 2 years ago, although they are getting together for lunch this Tuesday. Sitting here with me today is Frank Howson, along with Minelle and Maria. So Frank Howson,
Yes.
I'll stop using your full name now, but
Mr. Howson.
Mr. Do you prefer Frank or Mr. Howson?
Or anything. I've been called a lot of things.
Sometimes
Yeah.
Nigel.
You've been you've sort of made your career in film in Australia, through the 80s and the 90s, and moved internationally.
Yeah.
Sort of a little bit back and forth.
I'd always been in show business. I kind of started when I was a child performer when I was about 7. So I grew up in the theatre, and I'd been in about 21 stage productions before I was 21. And the last one was the original production of Jesus Christ Superstar, which ran for about 2 years. And from there I got into writing musicals, and from there the natural development was to move into movies.
So how did Boulevard Films come about?
It came about because my business partner and I, we had a record company at the time, and we wanted to move, or I wanted to move into movies. And so we set about, we had a script that I'd written about the life of the Australian boxer Les Darcy. And it was approved by the Darcy Estate, which was the only script they'd ever approved of. And we had a lot of things really happening with that movie. There was a lot of buzz about it. Anyway, because it was a period film, it was a very big budget, and half of it had to be shot in America. So it was a very good lesson to a couple of naive boys that, you can't budget your first film. It's something that's outrageous. There are steps. So anyway, we knocked on doors for about 5 years trying to get into the business, and I think anyone else in their right mind would have given up.
So did you go the Film Victoria route, or did that exist then?
Yes, it did. It did. I think I sent them a script at one point asking for some money, and I don't think I got it. So I kind of, in my Irish stubbornness, went, okay, well, we'll do it alone. So we went our own route, and then at a later date, when we were having a meeting. This is a good story. We had a meeting in Sydney with a merchant banker about funding this Les Darcy project, and as soon as by then, after 5 years, I had the spiel down. I mean, I could do this pitch. I could have you in tears by the end of it. And so anyway, he patiently listened to the whole pitch. And then at the end of it, he said, too expensive. I went, oh. And then he said, do you have anything else?
And what year was this, sorry?
This would have been 80.
Hey guys, so sorry to interrupt. Your mic is out, so
Oh!
we'll it right on air.
Live TV.
Where's this guy?
Right, so technical
original?
difficulties.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Should we just start from the start?
No, we're rolling. Everything's good.
This is live TV for you.
Hello, how are you?
So what
Streaming,
we're
is
gonna
it?
do now,
Yeah.
Probably.
put this here.
I was like, Caitlin couldn't not be on camera. She was
I just could not be on camera.
Caitlin,
Just
no, but it was so cute how she
Hello,
came in. I
hello,
was like,
hello.
Caitlin.
All right, is that good?
I don't know.
Can we hear him?
Yep. Okay. So we were on.
Was that kind of how your pitching went when you were pitching? They come in and go, hang on.
Not really.
You need
has it changed much though from when you pitched for your movies?
Oh, hang on,
in
but
the
he was
80s, though?
explaining just before that when he was pitching, they said it was too
So
expensive.
anyway, they said it was too
But he had
expensive.
another idea.
Long story short, is the merchant banker said, do you have anything else? And I said, yeah, I do. I have a story about an Australian writer who has become very successful in Hollywood, and he is now giving it all up to come back home to try and reunite with his family. and you know, seeking redemption, and walking away from all the crap and the fakeness of his life, and you know, and the guy's all.
I like that.
He said, when can I see a script? And I said, I can have it to you by Friday. Terrific. How much? I said, oh, well, we can do it for $1 million, I'm sure. This is fantastic. So, anyway, I walk out, and my business partner said, how come you've never mentioned the script to me? I said, I haven't written it yet.
So you had until Friday.
I went home and I had 4 days of day and night writing the script. I sent it up to Malcolm. He phoned me and he said, we have a deal.
Nice.
And was that how your film company started?
Yes.
Was that, yeah.
Yeah.
So from then you actually got private investors and made, I think it was 15 films?
Probably.
So how did that, I mean, how was that success? That would have been quite different for the Australian film industry, which is known as definitely being very government funded, especially back then.
Well, what happened was when we were doing Boulevard of Broken Dreams, we had the investment. The merchant banker said, listen, I know I have the investment for film, but we do need to pick up the non-deductibles. Now, the non-deductibles are all the things that the investor can't claim a tax deduction on, like the legals and the account, all of that stuff. So it's still, you know, it came to, you know, a couple $100,000. So anyway, Peter and I, we applied to Film Victoria, and we sent a copy of the script that everybody else was in love with. John Waters loved it. He wanted to play the role. We had all of this, everything lined up, ready to go. Another terrific production for Victoria, and a lot of people were going to be employed. Anyway, we sent it to them. All they had to do was pick up the non-deductibles, and we had another big production. Anyway, the gentleman in charge at the time phoned me, and he said, Frank, we're having to decline putting the money in. And I said, and I know they put the money up for a lot of films, and a lot of films that didn't do very well, and yet I thought at the time we had a lot going for us, certainly with John Waters in the lead. And I said, why are you declining the investment? I said, tearjerker. I said,
I don't understand.
I said, so you didn't, I said, you didn't like the script? And he said, oh no, the script's quite well written. So I said, so let me get this straight, you're declining the film because you don't like a certain genre of movie.
Like, I don't like rom-coms. Goodbye. Is that what
Yeah,
So they didn't put the money, so Peter and I had to go around and we had to mortgage everything we had, including probably things we didn't have. And we had to put up the non-deductibles ourselves. And then, when the film came out and was nominated for 7 AFI awards, including Best Film, Film Victoria phoned me and they said, oh, this is so wonderful. Can we run a full-page ad in Encore congratulating this wonderful Victorian production? And I said, no, you can't.
Because you didn't fund
Because
any of
they
it.
I
didn't
said,
help.
I needed your help then. I don't need it now. And what they were attempting to do, in my opinion, was to make people think that they had supported this production, and if it had been up to them, this film would never have been made.
But from that, that was how you began Boulevard Films? Was
Yes,
that, yeah.
and probably that's why it never went back to the government.
Ah, so that was quite unusual back then to have privately invested films in Australia, wasn't it? It wasn't.
Oh no, well a lot of people were using the 10BA system.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people have since put, you know, put the 10BA system down.
Are you able to just quickly explain what the 10BA system was?
Well, it means that
Our viewers are YouTubers; they probably have no idea.
I mean, it's used in a lot of different countries. But the thing is, if you you know, you have to put out a prospectus or an offer document. Of course, has to be a legal document. It has to be vetted by corporate affairs. And what happens is investors can read the document, and if they so wish to speculate and put their money in, at that time they got, I think it was 150% tax break.
Oh.
So if you had a couple of distribution deals in place, plus on top of it they get 150% write-off on what they've invested, a lot of times the investor was in profit before the film even came out.
So it was very.
So it was a good deal.
Yeah, it was a good deal.
Good deal for the investors, and so during that time, a lot of Australian films got made. Now, a lot of people complained that under that scheme, there were some really shitty films made. Well, guess what? There are a lot of shitty films made in Hollywood.
There are a lot of terrible films made under any system.
And he's, right now there are.
But the argument I would use is that during that period, people like Peter Weir and a lot of very famous people who went on, they got their break doing those movies. And there are a lot of directors who've never directed before, or they got to direct a film. A lot of editors who've never edited before got to edit on a real film. And okay, their first outing may not have been great, but then their second one was better, and their third one was really
So
good.
we actually had an industry then, as
Yes.
opposed to what we have now, which is.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was, you know, whether you choose to write it off as education, but what it was building an industry.
Yeah, so basically, like, sort of people were people sort of coming in and like cutting their teeth on these
they
movies,
were.
like.
I
not
know
even-
when I had Boulevard, I gave 4 directors their first opportunity to direct a movie. I gave 3 editors their first chance to edit their own movie. A lot of actors, their first opportunity to star in a movie. A lot of set designers, you go through the list, a lot of people got their break.
And you had a lot of Australian talent. I was just looking, you had like Kerry Armstrong, Guy Pearce,
Yeah.
who's obviously gone on to amazing things. And you won quite a few awards as well. So whether that wrapped up, how did you cope? Like what, because you've only ever been in entertainment. So what, you went to America then, didn't you?
I went to America. I had a very messy breakup with my business partner, which lasted a couple of years. And at the end of that, I was not in a good way, because in order to get out of this entanglement, I basically had to burn the fort, and I lost most of my money. I lost most of my films for some years. I lost my home. I lost a lot of things. But you know, it was a traumatic experience. So I went to America.
Yep.
Because you know, on every corner in Melbourne there was a bad memory.
Yeah, so like a lot of ghosts and
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yes. A lot of things that could only seem to be whispered in the wind.
So, moving to the US, you also sort of became quite involved in the film industry there, as I understand it.
Yeah. I worked on
like-
a few movies, and you know, mainly I was getting jobs as a ghostwriter, where you know you would get scripts that were not in a great way, or great shape, and they would pay me sometimes quite a lot of money to rewrite it or polish it. You didn't get a credit, but you got the money. Robert Town, who wrote Chinatown, he did that on many films. But it's, again, terrific experience.
Yep.
Great experience.
Now with like coming back, you do seem to be on an upward, I believe. Your career's going up again.
Yeah.
Some things that are going on.
Yeah.
And I know that I saw a preview of your film Remembering Nigel,
Yes.
which hasn't been distributed yet.
No.
So what would you think as far as making a film in today's climate and getting distribution?
Well,
What are your views on that?
Well, the thing about Remembering Nigel, I was just explaining before, Richard Wollstonecraft, the reason it came about, when I came back from 9 years in America, Richard Wollstonecraft met with me, and he's actually somebody I gave a film to direct during the Boulevard years. And Richard, unlike a lot of people, has always remembered, and he's remained very loyal to me, and I treasure that. And he met with me and said, listen, I would love to have a retrospective at the Melbourne Underground Film Festival, which he is the head honcho of. He said, I'd like to have a retrospective of 8 of your movies from the Boulevard years. And I said, okay, that's good. And then he said, I think it'd be really nice if on the final night you did something new, you showed something new, so the people didn't think you were dead.
Just to speak on you.
So I thought, okay. Now, what I had to do was come up with something that was obviously very economical to shoot. So I came up with this idea of these people being interviewed separately in a room about this man they once knew called Nigel. And everyone's opinion of this man is so different that you realise nobody knew him at all. And the more they talked about Nigel, the more they revealed about themselves. And anyway, and also because people had sat through 8 of my movies, it was kind of poking fun at me, or the myth that had sprung up about me in 9 years, and a lot of misinformation. And and poking fun at some of the films were referenced in Nigel. So we did it, and I fully expected that it would only be shown on the closing night. It was like an in-joke. So anyway, they showed it on the closing night, people started laughing, roaring with laughter from the moment it began, and at the end people were weeping. And Tate Brady of the FFC came out, and I was out on the footpath having a cigarette, and he said, "You have to turn this into a feature." He said, "This is extraordinary." Well, easier said than done. So
Are you giving me money?
then it became like a 6-year adventure, because it was like an Orson Welles production where I'd make a bit of money, I'd shoot a bit more. I'd make a bit of money, I'd shoot a bit more. And because the film was mainly interviews and then crazy flashbacks, it was a film that you didn't have to worry about continuity. You could shoot it like that. So it became like this enormous jigsaw puzzle. And then when I went to America, because then I was caught up in this trap that I'd set for myself, where it was a very revealing film. A lot of it is about me. What was meant to be an in-joke at the beginning, and now become a serious movie.
We should be actually lucky that he's facing us to the camera tonight. He isn't turning around.
And then in the end, it became it took a life of its own. And Sally Kirkland wanted to be in the film, and dear Sally said to me, "Oh, you'll have to write the part for me." So I thought, well, what can she do? So anyway, I started writing her part. Then Taya Gill wants to be in it from Queerest Folk, so I wrote her part. And then Martin Landau wants to be in it, so I've got to think, well, what character could he be? So this film, it was a really organic experience. In the end, I wasn't driving the film, it was driving me. It really took on life.
It's almost like a story that wanted to be told, but that's just found distribution now, hasn't it?
I now have a deal with the Adler Company, who are very big in America and they're very good, and they are going to represent its sales all over the world. And it was recently in a film festival in Boston, and the reaction to it was amazing, which it always is. Every time this film plays before an audience, the audience reaction is amazing.
I have to say, when I saw it, it's definitely it's a moving film, as opposed to like films you see which are more popcorn eating films that they just happen around you. It's definitely a film that makes you think, and you do get moved by it.
Well, when Martin Landau phoned me and he said, "Frank, next week I'm doing a film where I'm only working on it for 4 days, I'm getting $1 million. Why should I do yours for nothing?" And I said, "Well, Martin, this is not a film me and Eva's got involved with to make a quick buck. If I don't want to do that, I'd made a gangster film." I said, "This is a film that I think says some serious things." And I said, the underlying story, moral of the story is, what does anybody really know about anyone else? And sometimes in this day and age, because we're always in a rush, sometimes we rush to judgment over people, and sometimes we get it wrong. And there was a very long pause, and Martin said, "There's a lot about celebrity too, doesn't it?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, when do you want me?"
So, would you say, in your experience, because you've been in this industry for a long time, has it gotten a lot easier to, let's say, make a film compared to maybe the 80s, or distribute it?
I think it's very hard to make a film now.
Even though technically the technology is cheaper.
It's evolving as well.
The platform is everywhere.
You're right, and you're right. It is hard to make a film if you're expecting funding from somebody. It is very easy to get a group of friends and go out and make a simple little film, and hopefully it'll be so edgy that it'll get a release, and then it gets released in a couple of art houses in America, and a certain critic says, "I love this film, you're away."
What about the selling point though? Because we were talking before about, you know, if let's say I make a film with my friends, and how about like going to try and get that distribution, because a lot of major distributors.
Well, Nigel's been trying to be distributed for
But
6
like-
years now.
No, well, I'm telling you,
Because you've sold a lot of films though, and I haven't sold any.
No, but he's
No,
sold a lot.
but
He's
let me tell you,
dual-trained,
and I don't want to depress you,
Yeah.
but even though I have sold a lot of films, a lot of my Boulevard films were sold all over the world at a time when Australian films couldn't get released. You would think that would make, at least have the door open to me to certain distributors. No, in fact, I'd like to say that Australian distributors turned Nigel down, but the sad thing is they didn't see it.
Didn't they?
They would look at the trailer and they go, "Oh, this looks a bit too original," and I go, "No, no, you see,
even
you
for art
have."
house cinemas, like. So you've got to.
I say you have to see the whole film to get the story. They
We
couldn't be
were
bothered.
talking about the Australian industry this week, and apparently last year was quite a good year for it, but the
Yep.
year before was quite a bad year.
Right.
And they've got a situation where, say, they had a film that was shot in WA with Ewan McGregor called Son of a Gun,
Right.
and it had that actress Alicia, I can't remember her last name, she won
Yeah.
an Oscar for The Danish Girl in it.
Right.
And that had apparently, according to the production company, a very good P&A, which is print and marketing
Yeah.
distribution.
Yeah.
Opened in all these cinemas, did I think $300 at the box office. It didn't do very much.
300.
It might have done a little bit more than that, but it did not do much.
Can I just
And so what's the state of Australian film? When you've got like Mad Max winning Oscars,
Yeah, but
and then you've got the fact that you can't get people
I
to
know
go and see
Mad
a
Max
film.
is an Australian film, but
Yeah.
it's what you would call an exalted Australian film. When you have a $200 million budget or whatever it was, I'm not sure that's an Australian film. I think that's an international movie.
Yeah.
Can I
you
just add, what about
But they did
the-
say that. Oh, sorry.
It is an Aussie, Aussie film and stuff. But what about the international stars that they bring in to promote that film? I mean, would it still get the same if it's a whole Aussie cast? I mean, do Australians want to see
Mad
Aussie
Max
films?
would have succeeded with a full
not just
Aussie
Mad
cast
Max, but
because
yeah.
it's now part of it's a
Well, it's a franchise, Mad
it's
Max.
Just
So Mad
generally
Max is a
speaking,
little bit
other
different
Aussie
too.
films, because there's
Well, the top
like
three for 2015 were
No, I tell you,
at the
I
box
tell you,
office.
no, I did.
Because I've noticed a lot of international stars, not to be rude, I've noticed a lot of international stars in Aussie films that get a lot of,
You know why? It gets you distribution.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what
Yeah.
the point I'm trying to make.
But
But
they've
would
said
you
that
get the same
Screen Australia
distribution with
still,
them? No,
still
you
has, they still have that red tape, don't they? That you have to hire a certain amount of Australian actors, and a certain, I think it's 75% of supporting cast have to be Australian,
Of course.
and I think 50%.
Of course. But I remember, Actors Equity used to be very militant when I was making films. You had to fight them to get one import in. And my argument was always, who cares about one import if it gives, another 4,000 Australians a job?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
last time.
If it was 4,000 imports and one Australian job, I'd say, okay, you have a case. You have a case.
Yeah.
But on that note, though, if you're bringing in a lot of international films, that gets jobs. But they just pack up, go back to the country, and then you're out of the job long term. Or
Yeah, but then you've got people who go, oh, Australia's an okay place to shoot. We'll go back there.
But that's for That's
Yeah,
good for tourism and stuff.
I believe Jack Thompson said that when he was in Breaker Morant,
Yeah.
and that was made because Edward Woodward got the lead. Jack Thompson said being in that film with Edward Woodward got him noticed by an international audience, and then suddenly Jack Thompson was an international name. You see, that's how
That's
it works.
interesting. So you
That's
balance
how
it
it
out,
works.
and it gets you the notice that you need.
So where do you
Gets you
think
noticed.
Australia is right now with filmmaking?
Oh, in the toilet. I don't know.
Because we're all over the place, it seems. Sometimes we have good years, sometimes we have bad years. The top
Yeah.
three films I think last year were Mad Max. They were Russell Crowe, The Water Diviner,
Well,
and
I
a
think-
film called Paper Planes, which
think-
I haven't even seen.
I think an important question here, though, is like what is a good year or a bad year like actually mean? Like what are we comparing? What are we actually comparing that to?
But would you be able to
because
do
we've-
Boulevard films now, given the climate we're in? Would it be possible? That's
Well,
probably a
the
good-
reason that worked Boulevard Films, the reason the company worked was because we put out Boulevard. As I said, we had to do that on our own, and then because it then got sold all over the world, it got a lot of nominations here, got a couple of awards. Then we had investors going, what else have you got? And it just happened I had about 4 or 5 scripts. So,
You'd written the night before.
but ironically, the script of mine that I've spent like 30 years on, that Les Darcy movie, is still yet to be done. So
that's still not any closer to being.
Yeah, it came very close in Hollywood. Heath Ledger had it on hold for 2 years. He loved that script. It was going ahead. Gene Hackman looked like playing Tex Rickard. But he said, you have to understand, in Hollywood, you can spend years on a movie, you can get this close to shooting, and then it falls over.
Do Aussies though really want to see Aussie? A lot of Aussie films that I noticed have got animals in there, like Red Dog, Oddball, This Babe. Do Aussies want to see films?
Wog Dog.
Do Aussies want to see films though?
The Wog Boy, didn't Nick put in his house for that movie?
He
Lexi
probably
was saying.
did.
Yeah, he said he mortgaged his house.
But
so
I think if you do Wog Dog, it's got only I think
Kenny?
to work on that.
Kenny was a success. So there seems to be occasionally a certain film.
I told you
touch.
this in film industry is in something. Kenny.
Australian film industry is a bit of a hit and a miss. Like, do Aussies want to see Aussie films though? That's a.
Apparently,
I think what has
sometimes they
happened.
do, sometimes they don't.
I think what has happened. No, I think Australian audiences will go to something if they hear.
Yeah.
You know, the best publicity of all is word of mouth.
Well,
Somebody
Kenny was
saying,
word of
"I've
mouth.
seen that
That's how
great
Kenny
film."
works. It was pretty much
But you
word
see, a
of mouth.
lot of Australian audiences have been burnt by, I hate
That's
to say it, but
interesting.
quite a few Australian films that have been really bulletproof.
See, that's interesting you say that. Josh Lawson actually mentioned that Australians, and I've got the got an article here that I read, and he said that Aussies have just been burnt quite a lot of times in regards to film.
I think so. I think a lot of
right,
films
yeah.
have gone up on the screen that probably should have been a telly movie. And you know, when you project something on the big screen, I think if you're not making an event movie, a big budget event movie, your best other chance of getting an audience is, well, what I've attempted to do with Nigel, is to make a film that's so uniquely different that it's not on TV, and hopefully it works the same way David Lynch's films work, as a talking point, where people see it and they go, you have to see this film, I've never seen anything like it. That, I think, otherwise, if you don't have one extreme or the other, you're going to fall through the cracks.
Or if all else fails, just put Hugh Jackman and Nicole Kidman in the film, you know?
Well, I
Or
think,
Baz Luhrmann, because he's got the top. He's
Yeah.
got 4 of the top 10
Strictly
greatest
Ballroom,
films.
Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Apparently.
I think Baz Luhrmann, instead of doing another film for $200 million, he needs to save a third world country. You know, I mean, really.
He's Baz. He likes to move a tree instead. Apparently,
okay.
he wanted to move a 300-year-old tree in The Great Gatsby because it was in his shot.
It was-
He's like, "Can we move it?"
Well, he
and they're
can
like,
do
"No,
that.
Baz, we can't.
Well, yeah.
You can't
That's
move a
reasonable.
300-year-old tree.
That's reasonable.
It's not reasonable. It's protected."
but I mean, like the way we consume films now is like it's
Netflix.
it's a lot different to how it was, you know,
I know.
20 years ago.
I know people look at a film on it like this.
Well, like I think cinema has sort of become like it's become an outing. It's
Yeah.
a lot more of an outing than
And
like
it's very
than our way of.
expensive.
Y-
Given
yeah,
what
yeah.
it costs for Netflix, you have to actually hope that film's going to be good. Given like popcorn's $1,000 now.
Yeah.
I know. That's where they make the money.
I know. Apparently, it's because that guy from Village got kidnapped years ago by the Brazilians, and they've been trying to pay him back by the candy store prices.
Really?
That's what
That
somebody
makes
wrote
sense.
once, and
You
I
heard
thought
it
that
here
does make
first.
sense.
You heard it here first.
But you were talking before about how, like, you know, if you're not making sort of a big event movie
Yeah.
or sort of
Yeah.
something that works at festivals, basically,
Yes.
then it's effectively not going to get seen at the cinema.
Well, it just means that you're in that I call it a very dangerous middle ground, which is interesting because most filmmakers think, oh, this will be a nice, safe movie. No, I don't think safe works anymore. I don't think it works anymore. Not on the big screen, maybe on TV.
Does
Not-
anyone really want to take any
TV's
risks
almost
though?
more edgier than film these days.
Does anyone want to take any risks? I mean, a lot
I
of
am.
there's no.
I'm taking
Well,
risks.
you're taking risks, but generally speaking, there's a lot of
But
remakes. There's a
honestly,
lot of
how much did Nigel cost? It's like roughly to make, because I'm guessing it didn't cost $30 million.
No, in real cash, it
You're
was.
like maybe in blood, sweat, and tears, but not in.
Well, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
In real cash, probably about $30,000. In deferred fees,
Yeah.
meaning people will get paid when the film gets released.
Yeah.
Probably about 300,000.
Okay, so Hollywood are at the stage where they don't think an indie movie can be made for less than 30 million.
I'm telling you, if you walk in the
So that's interesting to
But Hollywood's
hear.
remaking a lot of films and just having an existing fan base with all their films.
But then
There's
with
no originality
Australian
in there.
film, are we just
No,
another
that's-
place for Hollywood
well,
to make their films,
no,
or can we continue to make our own films?
We
The
can.
reason there's no originality is the same reason there is none in Hollywood. It's filmed by committee. And when you call it Screen Australia,
yeah.
or you call it Paramount Pictures, or you call it whatever, you have a number of people who are sitting there going, are we going to risk our jobs by saying yes to this?
Yeah, exactly.
And they want to know that they can compare it to something. Oh, this is exactly like Strictly Ballroom. Oh, terrific. Then, yeah, there's a good chance people will go and see it.
That's a safe option.
So what they're doing is they're making films that can be categorised, and they go in a safe path, and what that leads to eventually is boredom.
Well,
Well,
do you think-
everybody,
do-
the audience is
do- do-
bored
do you think-
already.
That's right.
Do you think that categorization sort of comes from a place of like there's two different things two different angles that could be coming at it from, and one of those is okay, we're seeing this thing that's successful, and we want to see something else that's successful. We want to be behind something else that's successful in the same way, as in we wish we were behind that movie, so we'll be behind this one instead. Or is it sort of a thing of like, okay, like we just sort of need sort of a clearer image of what's happening so that we know what we get?
And I think in a lot of cases you have. I mean, if on the board selection committee, of Screen Australia, if the selection committee comprised of George Miller and Peter Weir and Bruce Beresford and people who've made some extraordinary films, if they knocked you back, you kind of go, oh well, I guess they're right. But in a lot of cases, I'd like to know who are the experts who are picking these films, and I'd like to know if any of them have ever made a hit film.
So
That's
then,
interesting.
what's your recommendation for Australians trying to make films here?
To do it your own, like you get a group of friends, defer your fees, come up with a great script. I'm telling you, it all comes from the script. If you've got a great script, you will get some sort of a name actor who will go, hey, this is a great part.
So you think attaching a name's important? Definitely.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you've got no chance. No chance. No chance.
Like in terms of like attaching names to things, I mean, like even just looking at Remembering Nigel, like you've got sort of an all-star cast of like a sort of a who's who of Australian actors.
And yet, as I said before, Australian distributors wouldn't even look at it. And yet, here is probably the greatest cast ever assembled for an Australian film,
So why would that be? Why would they not be interested?
because they saw
They're
the
just scared?
trailer and they said it looks too original.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah,
But then
not being able to-
once it gets distribution, they're going to want to claim it, I'm guessing. Like if it gets distribution in America, And
No,
is
it's been
received-
sold not by me, but by the Adler Company in Los Angeles. Who knows? Probably now certain distributors here will go, oh, it must be
That
good.
happens all the
Must be
time,
good.
though. It happens all the time. You come up with a good script, they don't like it, then it gets a lot of attention and they
Yes.
love it.
so you have to have
That's the
somebody to
same
say
thing.
yes before everybody says yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
But what about the audience, though? These days, the cost of everything's gotten up. Like, you can't just make a good film. A lot of people won't really want to go to watch something that, I guess, costs a lot of money. Or they're really being more critical now of the way it's made.
Well, I think that in Australia, more time needs to be. I go to the Melbourne Underground Film Festival every year and see all the work of young filmmakers, and I think we have some amazing people, young people. And what I love about the young people making films now, genre is not a dirty word to them. They're willing to tackle anything, and I love that. The old brigade of Australia. It has to be set in the outback. I mean, give me a break. Hand me the gun. And you've got to have at least 3 kangaroos in your film.
Yeah.
Anyway, but now, I mean, young filmmakers, they're tackling lots of, but they do need to keep working at the script. You see, it all comes from the script. if you have a brilliant material, it wouldn't matter. If you have a brilliant material and you have a great actor like Helen Mirren, I'm telling you, you could put Helen Mirren against that wall with one light, but if you gave her great material, she would hold your attention. You give Helen Mirren bad material, it doesn't matter. It's Helen Mirren. You're going to go, oh, where's the door? It comes from the script.
So basically, it's that thing of like you can make you can make a bad movie with a good script, but you can't make a good movie with a bad script.
No.
Well, it starts with the writing, doesn't it? That's what they say even at the Oscars. It starts with the writing.
Hitchcock said, I'm given great praise for being a great director. He said, but I always work from great scripts. And if you check, North by Northwest, The Plane, The Shower Scene and Psycho, they were all in the script.
Some of them successful films though that are Australian have kind of have true stories behind them, like Red Dog, there's Rubber Proof Fence, there's Oddball, and they all come from the true stories though. And that's what I've noticed compared to, like, let's say Hollywood films, some of them are true stories, and that's where the big success comes. Does that kind of go to the true
I don't think it matters whether it's a fantasy or it's a home drama or it's a true story or what. It's just what we forget in Australia a lot of times is you have to. We love putting the anti-heroes in everything, but there is a fine line between being an anti-hero with people rooting for and somebody you think you're a jerk. Why are you wasting 2 hours of my time? I have no feelings for this person. You can learn some lessons from Hollywood because they have been doing it for an awful long time.
Yeah.
You have to give the audience something in that film they're rooting for.
Yep.
Even if they do lose at the end, they're rooting for that person to win. And that's the basic. Otherwise, you're not emotionally committed.
Well,
to
even
the film.
Taxi Driver, he was an anti-hero, but people...
You're still rooting for him.
Yeah, they still somehow liked him in a weird way.
But coming back to Screen Australia a little bit. I mean, you've talked a little bit about them sort of writing things by committee. But like my sort of understanding of Screen Australia is that they want to sort of put Australian, well, they at least say they want to put Australian film sort of on the international map. But they're sort of doing that with sort of things like Australia, Red Dog, which are effectively sort of tourist brochures.
Yeah, but you tell me what they also, in order to be a producer that gets their funding, you have to be a producer with a track record. Now that's fine. Now I ask you, how does any new blood get into the industry?
By having a go at it, basically.
By getting American success, it would seem.
No, you have to do it yourself. Yes. So, when my business partner and I burst into the scene, and it took us 5 years. And that was the same situation. It was the old brigade who were not letting any new blood in. Guess what? It's gone back to that.
So it's still like Baz Luhrmann gets his funding because he's Baz.
Well, he did that because of Strictly Ballroom. And I'll tell you, I think Alan Finney at Village Roadshow turned down Strictly Ballroom when he first saw it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that would be
big embarrassment.
Didn't that win a lot of AFIs?
Well, then it went to Cannes, you see, and then the Weinstein brothers wrote out a very big check and picked up the worldwide rights.
So it does seem almost like you have to go overseas to get noticed here, which seems a little bit ridiculous. But it seems to be what people do.
Well, I think we're an insecure mob. The old book, they're a weird mob. No, I think we're an insecure mob, and I think it gives us more confidence if somebody overseas has said, oh, that new film from Australia is really good. Oh, is it? Oh, we must see that. I don't blame anyone for that. It's just.
Kenny was pretty much word of mouth. That's what made it so big.
We're very Americanized though. There's a lot of majority of films that have made it really. There's not a lot of Aussie films that have really made it big. Like from what I've researched, there's 6 out of like a lot of them that are Aussie, and the rest are kind of like all American.
Well, the number one film is still Crocodile Dundee, which is the most.
There's still a little less films that are Aussie though.
Cliched Australian film you could think of.
But I read about Crocodile Dundee was about how he's showing Americans how it's done though.
No, you know what Crocodile Dundee is? We're getting back to those 5 stories we were talking about.
Well, it's just interesting that that's still the number one box office
No, because you
Film
remember I was
for
telling you
Australia.
before how every time
Yeah.
you remake Cinderella story, because it's so ingrained in our psyche, whether you call Cinderella story Strictly Ballroom or Pretty Woman, we respond to it. Crocodile Dundee is actually Tarzan Goes to New York.
That's an interesting way of seeing it.
That's true.
It is true,
That is-
actually.
It
Yeah.
is. And every time you tell that, whether you call it Tarzan Goes to New York or you call it Crocodile Dundee or you call it Coming to America, every time you tell that story, it works.
Well, it all sort of comes back to the hero's journey a little bit, though,
Yes.
doesn't it? Like,
Yes.
sort of having you've got a
Having-
protagonist in their normal world. They're sort of thrown into this special world.
Yes.
They have to master that and then sort of bring that back
Yep.
to their sort of original problem.
Yeah, and also we love to laugh at the naive person who's lost in New York.
So this is
And-
basically, from what I've gathered, this is all
Fish out of
heroes
water.
and protagonists. What about the rom-coms that, Aussie
Well, they
rom-coms?
said that. I
because
read a
here-
thing that said
there's always-
Australia is lacking rom-coms and teen comedies.
that's what I read. Because
Well-
it's always about saving the person, or the bad thing happens.
But when I was making films, there's an interesting thing I found is that with Boulevard of Broken Dreams, which is now, now it's been put out on DVD, it's now called an Australian classic. But I'm here to tell you, at the time, most of the series critics hated it because
But it did win AFIs, didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it was a
it
tearjerker, you see.
Yeah.
Yep.
What I'm saying is, at that time, you would be forgiven for thinking that there was no emotion in Australia. A lot of our films were very dry. There was no
Yeah.
tearjerkers. There was no.
So you weren't allowed to cry?
We were very dry on our emotions,
Yeah.
and I think probably we are as people. We hold a lot of things in, and I know it made a lot of men uncomfortable. Boulevard of Broken Dreams. The fact that John Waters broke down and cried, and he was so distressed about winning back his family. I think it made a lot of men very uncomfortable. Certainly, a lot of the very stitched up critics, and also then when I did a film called Hunting, one would have been forgiven before that of thinking there was no sex in Australia, because none of our films ever had any sexual content. Hunting was the first film where people actually went to bed and did something. And I think that was a revelation to the international audience.
So it's
then
like, don't make a
basically-
rom-com, basically? Like, if let's say we made a rom-com now, do you think that would get the same? Because Little Death came out in 2014, from what I gather, from the Josh Lawson one, but it didn't make as much as, let's say, if we made a hero save
What do you
the
think's
day.
more important, having a star attached or having a good story? Because you look at Kenny
Well,
where
a
there's
good
no
story,
star,
a good story gets you the star.
but it's, yeah.
But yeah.
And you don't have to have an American star. There are a number of Australian stars now. Back in my day, there were very few, but now there are quite a lot.
Do you think that you
of
did a
Australian
lot
names.
to help Guy Pearce launch his career in America, given that you cast Guy Pearce quite a few times?
I put him in his first 3 films.
Do you think you helped him take on Hollywood,
Without doubt.
given he was on Neighbours, I think, or something?
No. When I cast Guy Pearce in his first film, I gave an interview where I said, this kid, if he keeps walking and talking and doesn't bum in the furniture, is going to be an international movie star. I remember going to an Australian Film Institute function, and some producer walked up to me and he said, you think that kid in Neighbours is going to be a big international star? And I went, yes, and he laughed in my face.
All right. So on that note, we're actually running out of time, so we're going to have to wrap up. So this has been provisionally
Yes.
approved. I've been Mike Gorrie.
And very good to see you, mate.
You've been Frank
Yes.
Howson.
Frank Howson.
I am.
I'm Minelle Lewis, and
I'm Maria.
And see you next week.
Next week, yes.
I don't think we've mentioned Easter when we had Easter eggs there.
Very good.
They can see it. That was really good. Thank you so much.
That's all right. Play over with it.